Good afternoon. My name is Gillian Balaban, and I am Board Liaison Governance Relations at GRI. Welcome to the meeting of the Global Sustainability Standards Board, known by its acronym, the GSSB, held on 10 July 2025. This meeting is being hosted from Amsterdam, the Netherlands. Please note that all public GSSB meetings are being recorded, and you can find the audio recording on the GSSB meeting webpage, along with the high-level summaries of previous GSSB meetings. Present from the GRI Secretariat today are Bastian Buck, Chief of Standards, Helke Boutrago, Director Sector Standards, and Peter Dawkins, Senior Manager Standards. We will now start with the roll call. Anna Nefedova.
Present.
Anne Lindsay.
Present.
Charles Chu.
Present.
Chalundra De Silva.
Present.
Deborah Ing.
Present.
Felipe Martina Rodriguez.
Present.
Galia Tsankova will join a little later. Julia Genuardi will also join later. Jeff Robertson.
Present.
Rebecca Kuriat.
Present.
Tomu Machiba.
Present.
And GSSB Chair Carol Adams.
Present.
Thank you, everyone. GSSB members Igazuma Okoroba, Yan Dong, and Susanna Muscat-Gorska sent their apologies. I will now hand over to the Chair, Carol Adams, to open the meeting.
Thank you very much, Gillian, and thank you to you all for being here for this additional GSSB meeting this month. If we could go straight to the agenda items. The first item is the GRI sector standard for textiles and apparels to discuss and hopefully approve the exposure draft. A number of members have made comments on file stage on the document, and the Standards Division have responded to those comments. And I'm going to hand over to Peter and Helke to take us through the comments and the responses.
Great. Thank you, Karen, and thank you, everyone, for all the comments and all the input that you have shared with us. So if we can please go to the next slide, you would see an outline on how we propose to hold this session. So this introduction would be followed by the presentation of my colleague Peter, who is going to be sharing more details about the feedback we have received from the GSSB members, to be followed then by a discussion and further questions and comments that you may have. And to close then the session with an approval of the exposure draft of textiles and apparel and next steps. Thank you. So as you mentioned, Carol, before a couple of weeks before the previous meeting, we shared the Memorandum of Understanding and the exposure draft for textiles and apparel with the GSSB via file stage. And we have received comments from many of the members, which were greatly appreciated. And the project team answered to all the questions and the comments, and they have also highlighted how they are being implemented. The table below gives an overview of the type of comments and how we propose to deal with them. So we have first comments that were about clarification questions, for example, on the sector profile, on topic descriptions, or on some disclosures. And those are, for example, some of the ones that my colleague Peter is going to be walking us through today, as they are key pieces of the standard. Then we received a few comments, not many, around inclusion or changes in particular disclosures. Those would have required going back to consult with the working group. So we suggest that those are considered along other input that we're going to receive during the PCP. Then we have a number of comments, in particular, edits suggested for improved clarity and for concise arguments and to bring forward some key features in the standard that we will be implementing, considering in particular that also we follow some editorial guidelines when we develop the standard, so that the topic standards, sector standards, and universal standards are one product and have the same tone and voice. So we have some limitations about which editorial recommendations we can implement, but we have considered all of them and discuss with the editorial team as needed. Then last but not least, we also received a couple of suggestions for the development of topic standards, for example, on conflict-affected areas, on supply chain traceability. And those we suggest that are considered as part of the discussions around the work plan 2026-2028 that are going to be following in the next couple of months with the GSSB. So that's a bit of, in a nutshell, how we have dealt with all the comments and how we propose to approach them. And I'll pause there to see if there are any questions about the approach. And if not, then give the floor to my colleague Peter so he can continue the presentation.
I think you can continue, Helga.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Helga. Thank you, Carol. Good morning, everybody. For those of you I've not spoken to before, my name is Peter Dawkins. I'm the project lead for the development of the sector standard for textiles and apparel. Just to reiterate and echo Helga's earlier comments, huge thank you to the GSSB members this morning for the time and effort you've taken to review and read and provide your comments and answer to our comments that we responded to on file stage, and all the kind of the responses that we had. It's been really useful and good to see that kind of first reflections as to the first people outside of the project team and the working group as well. So to go through the first topics and the kind of main sort of a big chunk of questions and comments that came in from you guys was with regards to the applicability of certain disclosures, as well as the processing of reporting on management topics and basically how this would be handled by reporting organizations. So as you know, GRI, it's a modular system, and sector standards are built on topics and universal standards, which we then apply additional sector specific recommendations and disclosures as well. Every likely material topic within the sector standard has a component called 3.3, which is a part of the universal standards, which specifically talks about the management, prevention, mitigation, tracking, and effectiveness of the positive and negative impacts on each topic as well. So the structure of developing sector standards is to draw on the reporting that already exists in GRI standards. We don't have an intention in sector standards to create a new systems of reporting, but to guide reporting organizations to engage with the relevant disclosures from the universals and the topic standards. So we refer to applicable topic standards if there is one for each material topic within the textile sector. And of the 18 identified material topics in the draft, the majority do have GRI topic standards that we incorporate and then build our sector standards upon. The topic standards are written to be sector agnostic. So the disclosures at the bottom under the kind of additional sector disclosures and recommendations under 3.3 are additions that we've identified that are specific to the sector as well. So, and the reason that we add these additional disclosures in that topic is that the topic standards either don't have an applicable disclosure or they don't reach the necessary transparency expectations for our sector. However, reporting these together with the selected topic standards supports organizations in reporting sufficient information on the impacts in relation to that topic. So if we go to the next slide, please, Jill. Thank you. So once a sector standard has been built using the universals and the topics, and we've added in our sector-specific additions, reporting organizations will need to determine whether the likely material topics are applicable to them. Material topics, that represent organizations' most significant impacts on the economy, environment, people, and including human rights. The way that we've developed our sector standards as well, it's looking at what is applicable to the majority of the sector globally. So there will be certain organizations that may not have a particular activity that's unique to them that doesn't have a material topic, but part of the system of GRI is that when they're doing the materiality assessment, they will be able to identify those additional topics as well. It's part of the process. So impacts within the kind of disclosures for the likely material topics that affect the organizations. It's what they could or have on the economy, environment, people, including their human rights, which in turn can indicate the contributions that they have, both positive and negative, to sustainable development. When organizations go through the materiality assessment, they would then be able to report which sector standard topics are not material to them. So they would have to disclose this and should disclose the reasoning for that as well via the content index, using one of the reasons that you can see on screen as to why they've identified it as not applicable to them. GRI 1, which is the universal, has under requirements 3 through to 7, and GRI 3, another universal section 1, all provide reporting organizations with loads of guidance on determining what is material to them, how they should report material topics and impacts, and including what is not material for them, with explanations, importantly. So yeah, just that's the first kind of chunk of responses. So we'll move on to the next slide. Thank you, Jill. Just to remind everybody before we move into the actual kind of the topics themselves, what's the scope of the sector standard? So it starts at manufacturing and production of textiles and goes through to retail. We also include jewelries in scope, and the reason that we have this sector scope is obviously for we already have sector standards on a lot of the raw material production and manufacturing. So for example, we have a mining sector standard, we have an aquaculture and fishing sector standard, and we also have a an oil and gas standard. So for things like cotton and for polyester and for raw metals and diamonds and gemstones and stuff like this, we already have the applicable sector standard. So hence the scope of our sector standard starts at the textile production and manufacturing and goes all the way through to retail. If we have the next slide, please, Jill. Thank you. So another kind of big chunk of comments that we received from you guys at the GSSB was with regards to the livelihoods of women. So the slide is to provide some context on what the global picture of employment is on women's in textiles and apparel sector. Following your input, employment benefits for women have been added to the draft where appropriate, especially for employments for women with limited other opportunities. However, I just want to hopefully this comes across, that the slide provides some context as to how the standards results in its structure and the significance of those negative impacts. As noted in our responses to you guys via file stage, we will incorporate, the further references to employment. However, we need to be mindful, I feel, of the across the majority of the sector that there remains significant negative impacts that affect women in the sector. It's not, there's still a lot of negative impacts out there. So if we go to the next slide, please, Jill. Just to, again, give some further context. So the topics for employment and women impacts that affect women within the sector appears across numerous likely material topics in the sector that you can see on screen here. And it's important to stress as well that reporting organizations can report both the positive and negative impacts across any topic within the sector standard. So it's just, so this is something that reporting organizations are encouraged to do, and it's within the disclosure requirements as well. So next slide, please, Jill. The next big kind of feedback from the GSSB was, and an area that we received numerous comments was how our approach to suppliers is coming into this sector standard, how they're to be reported, how far up the supply chain reporting organizations should conduct due diligence, and so there was lots of feedback on that as well. So within the sector standard, the supply chains in this it's incredibly fragmented, complex, somewhat opaque as well, and it's subject. This was a huge area of discussion for the working group as to how to incorporate the supply chain appropriately within the sector standard. And we had our in-person meeting earlier this year, and we spent a long time discussing how we engage the supply chain, how all reporting organizations should expect to engage the supply chains as well. And it's a growing expectation as well to be more transparent on supply chains, with specifically with some significant brands and retailers joining these kind of transparency initiatives. So this has been discussed at length by the Textiles and Apparel Working Group, finding consensus as well, debated amongst our members, trying to make sure that we keep the reporting burden, not too onerous, and also still addressing stakeholders' expectations on those information needs. And I should say as well that this is something that we're focusing specifically on during our public comment period as well, looking at supply chain reporting, looking to get greater feedback on the expectations of supply chains as well. So yeah, it's definitely an area of further development and further feedback that we'd like to get from the PCP. Next slide, please, Jill. And the last kind of big topic that came up was the inclusion of ultra-fast fashion. So this will now be included within the sector standard. And essentially what ultra-fast fashion takes the negative impacts of the sector and exacerbates them even further. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard the term fast fashion. It's been around, since the late 90s. It's been 20 years. It's kind of been like the business model within the sector. Ultra fast fashion takes the impacts of fast fashion and ramps that up, and it's really driving further the impacts around labor, the environment. Even an example of the environmental impacts is just the logistical differences, using air freight rather than shipping, and the huge, obviously significant climate impact that shipping everything via air rather than huge cargo ships as well differently gives an examples of the kind of the ramping up that ultra fast fashion has. So that's definitely something that's now included within the sector standard as well. So that's the kind of the main collection of our responses and collections of our responses as well to you guys. So I will pause there and hand back to you, Carol.
Thank you very much, Peter. Does anybody have any questions of Peter and Helke? Can I ask if everybody is happy that their comments have been satisfactorily addressed through the process on file stage?
Yes.
Good.
Yep.
Okay. We can go to the next slide then, please. So, can we approve this exposure draft for release for public comment?
Carol, it's Jill.
Yes. Yes.
At the moment, we only have 11. Galia still hasn't joined.
Okay.
So I don't know if you wish to just move this a little further and wait for Galia to join.
Well, let's check with everybody here since we're here, and then we'll come back. I think. Because can I ask if everybody here on the call now is happy to approve this? Yes. Okay, thank you. Gillian will come back to this then later on when Galia joins and just check that she is happy. Anne?
Sorry, my reactions button is out of action. I just wanted to say, having followed the different feedback and discussions on file stage from a sort of labour union perspective, I think with the changes or approach that Peter has outlined, I think I would be happy to approve it. I think the balanced approach that has been outlined, picking up on those points, I think is helpful. So yes.
It has indeed been a thorough approach. GSSB members raised some good comments and questions, I think, and they've been well responded to. Indeed, thank you, Anne. Okay, let's move on then to the next item, which is the quarterly update on projects. Oh, sorry. We're going to talk about the PCP. We're going to talk about the PCP period. Thank you.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously this is subject to approval, but just to give you guys an overview of what our PCP plans are for between July and September. So the PCP will run until the end of September. We've got regional events organised with all of our GRI networks. We're in the process of pinning some of those down. We also will obviously be sharing information further with all of GSSB members as well. So please do share this with your networks, and trying to get as much information back as possible on this. Our main objective really is to raise global awareness around the textiles and apparel sector standard. As for those of you who are aware of the textiles apparel sector standard, that you'll know that there isn't one, whilst there are big hubs such as Asia and Southeast Asia and the ASEAN kind of region, China, for example, there are still manufacturing hubs in Africa, in Latin America, even within Europe and North America. So it's a really global sector standard So our main kind of real objective is to get good feedback globally, and to understand what are the perspectives from the hubs out in Asia, where it's predominantly manufacturing, through to North America, where it's predominantly brands and retailers. So to get that good global feedback, we're on the feedback that we were expecting from, well, we're hoping to get from those kind of manufacturing sections as well within Africa and South Asia as well. We're hoping, we are even hosting an in-person workshop next week in Sri Lanka. Chalindra will be there, and I'm even flying out to Sri Lanka to be part of it as well, and to speak to. We've got, I think, 100 invited guests are coming along to talk, and they are all interconnected within. They're not just Sri Lankan. They have networks in India and Bangladesh. So it's going to be a really wonderful opportunity to really get that message going straight off the bat. And then we're following up with specific regional webinars with our Africa network, with our LATAM network, and our ASEAN network as well. So Chilindra's already provided quotes, and he'll be participating in webinars as well. But an open invitation, if there are any other GSSB members as well that would like to be involved in some of the regional networks events as well, please do just let us know, and we can, hopefully dates and times align and stuff like that, so we can get that going as well. But yeah, just a quick overview of what our plans are during the PCP. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Peter. And it certainly is a sector that's had a lot of negative media attention, particularly around labour issues. And so hopefully we'll get some interest from the media in promoting the exposure draft, and that will in turn help get responses.
Definitely.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next slide then, please. So now we're going to the quarterly update implementation. So this is a new thing that we've asked for, getting an update on the various projects that are in progress and any delays or issues with the progress that they're making. So I'll hand over to Bastian, please, to take us through that.
Yeah, thank you, Carol. So we've shared the item 10 with a detailed update of the project schedule. This is indeed the first time that we're using this format for the updates, and also provide an update on all commitments that are made as part of the project schedule. So this session has two aims. One is I wanted to use the time to respond to any questions that might have arisen based on review of the materials shared, and the second one is to gather any feedback that the board colleagues might have on the format that we're providing here, because we indeed want to use this format for the quarterly updates going forward. And if there are changes to the format that you are recommending, then this is something we consider for the next update that is scheduled for end of September. So my first question to the board would be if there were any elements of the update that require further clarification.
I find it very useful, Bastian. It's very clear. Thank you.
Maybe was there anything that in terms of the specifics on the projects where a member had a question, and that I could expand on that now?
No, I think the document is so self-explanatory that there are no further questions, Bastian. So I'm guessing that there's likely not to be any comments on the format either, or areas for improvement.
If there
Not as
are,
a-
if things come to mind also after this, I mean, this will be something we're building together over time. I would employ the same format for the next update, unless I hear back from members that there are potential improvements, and then I'm always happy to discuss them. But this is now a standing item, and it will come back, 2 more times this calendar year, in September and December, with an update.
Okay, thank you very much. That is very helpful. And I see that we have Galia on the line now. Welcome, Galia. Can you hear
Hello.
us? Hello. You have just made us quorum, Galia. So we'd like to just go back to the textile sector standard and ask whether you, from your reading and contributions on file stage and so on, are happy to approve the exposure draft.
Yeah. That's okay.
Great. That's all of us that have approved it then. And so those events in Sri Lanka and elsewhere will be going ahead. Thank you, Galia. So could we then move to the next item, please, which is the project for on impacts, risks, and opportunities. We have discussed this a number of times, but we're now in a position to be looking at a project proposal. Mario is not able to be here, but Bastian is going to speak to this proposal.
Yes. So Mario had to bail out on the last minute on this. So I'm just representing the work that he has done on this today. We had a prior discussion with all of you on this. We had the opportunity to consult the governance bodies on this, and we are now. Sorry, can we move one slide back, because I think. We have now the chance to look at the project proposal once more and consider whether there are any further changes needed. The idea behind approving the project proposal at this point is that we have a scope for the project that we can engage further stakeholders on. We need support both from an expert perspective, but also would like to build out more collaborations on the project. We have the colleagues from the Japanese Standard Board, and we have the colleagues from the TNFD that are committed to help us with the project, but maybe there are opportunities in other jurisdictions as well, with other standard setters as well. So we, at this stage, we're looking at the project proposal like in a way, in a similar fashion, like we look at a project proposal for a topic standard or a sector standard. We would like to lock in the project in scope, and we will be returning to you with a planning around the timeline and the resourcing of the project. That's important in the project schedule update. This was one of the elements that was highlighted. We were able to advance the project until this point, the project proposal, but we have to find the adequate resourcing in terms of staffing to get it going. And depending on what we can confirm also in terms of resourcing in the coming months, we will be able to implement the project in different ways. How deep we can go, for example, in terms of stakeholder consultations, how deep we can go also in terms of the depths of building out case studies, for example, that will be determined by resource availability. When you look at the item 11 that we're presenting, we're basically providing an update on the governance related inputs, as well as some of the developments around us. I think it is important to mention, and this has been shared with you that with the TNFD, we have had the opportunity to launch case studies on impacts, risks, and opportunities at the London Climate Action Week. These are very well received, so first indication of how important this work will be, and we have their support also for the project, as I mentioned. From the other governance bodies, there's support for the project in general. Those that we had a chance to catch up with and follow up with, they're all very supportive of the project as it is outlined. Maybe I pause here just for, again, to ask whether there are any questions regarding the item 11 as we presented.
I think an observation, Bastian, this is really the cornerstone of our work on the global reporting system and really critical. It's the basis of our discussions with the Sustainability Standards Board of Japan, and the team have worked with TNFD on these case studies. So I would hope that resources come forward to make this happen. Yeah, and I'll so Jeff, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Carol. Thanks, Bastian. I just had one a fairly specific question. There's several references in the document about quote the standard. I think there it's referring to GRI 3 because we're talking about whether we're incorporating the guidance into GRI 3, right? But there's a later.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, this is just to confirm. This is indeed correct. This will be in the context of GS. Yeah.
Okay. In that light, there is a reference at some point later on about sort of an exposure draft of the standard. So I just wanted to clarify if that's a typo and we're talking about an exposure draft of the guidance, or if we're intending to then release an exposure draft of GRI 3, including the guidance and that change.
So this is a good point. I think we should have been more careful probably there in terms of wording it, that there are the two options basically, because what we could do, depending on where the project takes us, is to look at GI3 and exposing this in conjunction with the guidance that is going to be developed, or you actually have something that is ring-fenced and clearly delineated from the existing GI3 that you can expose separately. What we discussed with you also when the first version of the project proposal was available was that we're seeking an integration of the contents as much as possible, because it seems highly relevant that this content is elevated and becomes part of the standard. So I think we have to look at how it pans out, but where we sit now, we would say that we would probably expose this in conjunction to point to the interlinkages between the existing contents and GI3 and then the guidance that is going to be developed as part of the project. Does that help?
Yes, thank you, Bastian.
Thank you. Shalendra.
Thanks, Bastian. Just to understand the scope of the project proposal, Bastian, I understand we'll be going to the risks and opportunities. Do you see the scope extending towards identifying what is material of the double materiality part of it? For example, we know impact materiality, but from the risks and opportunities identified, the financial materiality lens would then say what are the risks and opportunities that have an impact on the prospects or the financial prospects of the company. So, to what extent would this project proposal extend to?
So the way we are outlining it here, and I think also reflecting on the discussions that we had, what we want to do is we want to connect GI's existing guidance on the impact perspective with the established approach to look at financial risk and opportunity. And we want to make sure that this guidance actually enables organizations to build on their findings from the impact perspective in their risk and opportunity assessment. And that includes, I think, both the reporting focused literature, So the work that other standard setters on the jurisdictional and international level have done in that regard, but also the risk management literature, which is increasingly acknowledging this linkage. And there is a almost separate body of work that is highly connected, but standalone, that we would like to build on. And when you look at the methodologies that are employed by organizations, and also those organizations that help entities to prepare sustainability reports, there is this duality, certainly. There is a risk management related aspect to it, and then there is the reporting angle. And both should be covered by this project.
Thank you. And Charles.
Yes, thank you. After the May meeting, it was May meeting. I think Mario had asked me to send him, because I had mentioned that he could benefit from identifying more our position and differences with the other standard bodies, such as the SSB and the ESRS. And I had sent him the document or the slides that I mentioned. Not sure I see that this was directly incorporated in the new draft. I was wondering if this was, I don't know if it's due to his departure or
No,
this was put on side, or yeah. So
if I recall correctly, I think your comments were on the global system paper, and not specifically on the project proposal. Because we discussed the global system paper in May, and that's the one that we're going to discuss next week. And there, indeed, we actually made clarifying changes in that respect.
Oh, okay. Sorry,
yeah.
I think
I think here we just, if there's anything in this project proposal that does not clearly delineate our approach and perspective on this, and how we see this also interacting with financial risk and opportunity and financial reporting, then I'm very happy to have a second look at this. But I think the feedback that went to Mario was focused on the global system paper.
Right. Sorry, I got it mixed up. But yeah,
which is the framing element for this project as well.
Okay, thank you.
And the two, of course, are very much connected, as is that paper around looking at what's needed for regulators and so on. And these three projects are all part of the GRI strategy now that has been incorporated by the supervisory board. Anne.
Thanks, Carol. And thank you, Bastian. I think it's a helpful paper. I just wanted to highlight one point within it, which I think you've captured the discussions that we had in the GSSB in March about how GSSB members could be involved within this project, in addition to the obvious governance stages, which of course we would build in. So I don't think this requires a kind of a change to the paper that you've presented, but just flagging up again, I think there's a real opportunity to tap into the expertise and experience of GSSB members on an ongoing basis, as well as obviously in the discussions at the more formal stages.
Yeah, just want to acknowledge that point, and that's, I think, what we mentioned in the paper is that we want to find the right balance, how we can involve you. I did mention that we will look at the resourcing, and that will define also how broad we can go in terms of expert engagement, whether we form a working group, fully fledged working group like we have for some of the other projects with 10 to 15 members. Then having some GSB members involved in this as a sponsor potentially, and or also with reviews as the project advances, that will be the next stage that we're outlining for you. And we've taken note of all the interest. I think it's one of the projects where we have very many of you signaling that you would like to be involved, and we will open this up when we provide the next update on how we can run the project and implement it. Yeah.
Indeed, I think this one is something that we're all very much bought into, having discussed it a number of times already and seeing its real importance in terms of a sensible global reporting system. Thank you Bastian. Are there any other comments on this item?
Can we move the slides, Jill? Because there is an approval slide also for this. If I'm not mistaken. Yes.
Are there any other comments? Nope. Okay, so can we go to approving the project proposal, please? And then, of course, the challenge will be finding funding for it to resource it. Okay, I'm seeing lots of nods, no dissent. We'll take that project proposal as approved. Thank you all.
Thank you. And also thank you to Mario in absence that he has advanced this for us to the stage.
Indeed. Yes, indeed. Are there any other items for discussion in the public session? Okay, then we'll move to the private session then, please, Gillian, if you could stop the recording.
Yeah, it will just take a few minutes and we'll come back online.
Understood. Thank you. If you could just let us know once we're offline, Gillian, please.
Yeah, YouTube sometimes takes a little while